Hello friends, welcome back to EduTap Himachal Pradesh Administrative Services channel. In this session, we are going to continue with the topic that we had left halfway in the previous sessions. We were talking about the LPG reforms. I cannot highlight the importance of these reforms in the Indian economy. So these reforms were discussed in brief in the past two sessions, that is in part 1. In part 1 sessions, we talked about the reasons that led to the BOP crisis. In part 2, we talked about the response of the Indian government towards the crisis in the form of LPG reforms, which were liberalization, privatization, and globalization reforms. So, if you haven't seen those two previous sessions, you go back to those sessions. That will form an understanding of this particular topic. And in this particular session, we are going to talk of what are the impacts these reforms have had on the Indian economy. So let's proceed, friends, now. So before proceeding ahead, in the last session I had given a homework question. Let's look at the question now. Considering the following statements regarding the concept of economic reform. So economic reforms denote the process in which a government prescribes the declining role for the state and expanding role for the private sector in an economy. So this is exactly right when it comes to economic reforms, and this is what was done in the 1991 reforms. And the second statement says it is safer to see economic reform as a policy shift in an economy from one to another, or an alternative development strategy. We also looked at how the Indian economy moved from a government controlled economy to a government facilitated economy. So both of these statements were right, hence the answer was option C, both 1 and 2. So now let's proceed ahead. So talking about the impact these LPG reforms have had, it has had both the short term as well as the long term. If you look at this, the immediate and the medium term objective was to ward off or to avoid the BOP crisis that was prevailing in the 1991. And the structural reforms also have had a long term impact in the Indian economy. So let's look at the impact that the LPG reforms have had on one by one. First, let us look at the size of the economy. So if you look at the size of the Indian economy, it has grown by many folds. That is from 6 lakh crore to 140 lakh crore. So this shows the impact these reforms have had and how it has had. See, Indian economy, which was a closed economy prior to 1991. It was opened up and all the investment had started coming into the Indian economy, and the economic activities started booming. So since then, the growth of industrial sector, the financial sector, it all has resulted into a cumulative effect of the rise in GDP. You can say that, you see that in the fiscal year 1991, this was the nominal GDP we are talking about, and in 2016, this is this. And if you look at the fiscal year 19, because this is the pre-pandemic, the pandemic has had a disastrous effect on the Indian economy. If you look at in 2020 economy, the Indian economy was around $2.4 trillion. So we have come a far way, and we are still marching towards the Indian government has set a vision of $5 trillion achievement by fiscal year 2025. So that is the trend or the trend we have seen when it comes to the size of the economy. Now let us look at the other factors. So the second factor is the forex reserves. So we have, and I hope you understand the forex reserve. So in 1991 we had a minimal forex reserve of 2 weeks import cover. So usually, why do we maintain such a huge amount of forex reserve? In 1991, we had a forex reserve which could only cover the imports for 2 weeks. Usually, all the investment that is earned through the export of the Indian economy, as well as the investment that comes through the FDI route, is accumulated in the form of forex reserve, which will act as a balance or a buffer, which will provide us a buffer when it comes to tackling any crisis. And majorly, since the Indian economy imports large of the commodities, so forex reserve will help us in accomplishing the task of those imports. So if you look at this, the decimal state of forex reserve was the tipping point. So this was the trigger which led to the BOP crisis in 1991, and since then the Indian economy has seen a manifold growth in the forex reserve. If you look at this curve or the trend that has been seen, this was the forex reserve, and it has touched the highest level. And if you look at the recent data in 2022, recent last week of Jan, it has touched around 634 billion, which is equivalent to 13 months of import cover. 13 months of import cover. We have come a far way from having just 2 weeks import cover to 13 weeks import cover. This is the second indicator on which we have improved a large by many folds. And now we are talking about foreign investment. So this is a part of the liberalization reform. So before 1991, the foreign investment in India was very negligible. But since then, Indian economy has been opened up to the foreign investors, and we have seen a large amount of FDI investment. With the infusion of FDI within the Indian economy, we see that the innovation thrives, as well as the economy is benefited because of the FDI, because they also bring the technology that is beneficial for the economic growth. Since they have advanced the technology vis-a-vis the Indian economy, hence this FDI element is very essential to boost the Indian economy, and that is what is mentioned here, and it has crossed $100 billion. So we are there was no curve to show that, but we have touched the many folds. So we have improved a large amount when it comes to foreign investment as well. Now let us look at the other criteria, that is the growing trade. See, what was the meaning of closed economy? Closed economy. So the imports were restricted, and as well as the exports. But as soon as the economy was opened up, it means we could import more freely now, as well as export to a larger extent. So that is manifested in the growing trade. So if you look at this curve, see, you can see that in 1991 our exports were this much and our imports were this much as a percentage of GDP. With the growing GDP, the percentage has also increased. So since 1991, India is seen as a successful exporter of auto parts, pharmaceutical goods, and India stands as the leader in engineering goods, IT, software, and textiles. So because of the growth in economy, the exports of these components have increased by many folds. So this is another indicator which shows that India economy has grown by large number. And apart from this, the service sector. We are seeing a service sector dominated growth in the Indian economy post 1991, and it can be reflected in this particular graph. See, if you look at this percentage share of GDP by contributed by the different services sector, this is the industry, this is the agriculture. So the agriculture sector has dipped down and the services sector has dominated. So this is the trend you can see in the services sector, and it has been accentuated by the LPG reforms in the 1991, taken in the year 1991. So now let us look at the next reforms, which is capital and financial market. So the liberalization of the Indian economy alongside the encouragement to private sector investment has led to the growth of a vibrant capital market. How can you see that? See, Sensex, which is an index of BSE, which was around 1400 points in July 1991, today has reached around 57,000 points. So this is an indication, or this is a supporting fact to ensure, supporting fact which gives us the evidence that the capital market has grown by large fold. And apart from this, so the setting up of SEBI which regulates the capital market has also led to the robust growth of the capital market. Though there were many outbreak of the scams, but SEBI has managed it well by controlling those scams and channelizing the growth of the capital market. We have seen the record growth of IPOs in the last year. So that is unicorns, that is $1 billion. Startups crossing $1 billion have increased to around 42 in number, and apart from that, many IPOs are registered over the last years. So that is again a significant indicator which shows that the economy has been growing when it comes to the capital market and the financial market. The price stability. which is very important. So why do we need price stability? For the growth of an economy, if we have stable prices, then we will have a lot of investment coming in, which shows that because the inflation is controlled, then the growth can be channelized in a particular manner. If there is a high inflation, then there is a hesitant from the investors as well as the private players, as well as the households, to consume in the economy. So consumption also adds to the growth of the GDP. So if you look at this, the corollary of BOP crisis in 1991 was growing inflation and instability in the government finances. So since then, volatility has largely been under control, and the government has done a fabulous task when it comes to controlling inflation. See, if you look at the current policy of RBI on inflation, the RBI has a mandate to control or keep the inflation within the range of 2 to 6%. This is pertinent to CPI inflation. So that is the objective or the process the government has been following. And apart from that, we are seeing that the consumption and the rise of middle class. So the opening up of the economy has also led to the growth of the middle class in the country, and because the middle class has been growing in large numbers, their demand is rising. So because if you look at the formula of GDP, which is C plus I plus G plus NX. So the consumption of the private sector or the household, because of the rise in middle class sector or the families, has increased. So this has increased, contributing to the growth in the GDP. So this clearly signifies how the growth in GDP has taken place because of the rise in the consumption of the middle class. So, and this is also another reason that the supply side constraints have been reduced, because we have already seen in the previous discussions that prior to 1991, the supply of all the commodities was constrained, which was freed up by liberalizing the Indian economy, and has also contributed to the growth of the economy. So the demand supply dynamic has led to increased consumption, resulting in the rise of the middle class. So that is again reiterating the same point. Now we are seeing the impacts beyond the economy, so such as the social sector, the education, health. Let us look at few of those policies. So the economy of any country does not operate in silos. See, let me give you an example. This is health sector, and this is the education sector and economy. See, if the economy grows, obviously it will have its spillover effects on the different other sectors as well. Just to give an instance, if a family which was earlier poor in nature, now it used to think only about the meeting its basic needs such as the house, clothing and the shelter. If it has grown in terms of income, then apart from meeting the basic need, it will also focus on meeting the other needs such as the education and the health. So similarly, when the country grows, the other sectors also tend to have an increased growth, and that is being seen in this. That is, health and education have improved, which can be seen through an increased number of colleges being established, hospitals. That is one thing. And apart from that, the nature of politics has taken a huge change. That is, politics of control has shifted to politics of regulation and facilitation. So if you look at the phrase of the current government, that is the minimum government, maximum governance. This is the phrase of the government, the present government of the BJP. So minimum government, what do we mean? So government will only act as a policy maker and facilitator. Apart from that, the governance is improving the administration. So the present government's theme or the entire mantra has been minimum government and maximum governance. So that also has changed with the LPG reforms, and it has had its impact beyond the realms of the economy, and it can be seen in this particular nature of politics. And apart from that, the intermingling of cultures. See, because of the increased globalization, we are also seeing the infusion or the let me give an example. The infusion of ideas from the Western world to the Indian country, such as the changing of culture, and we are also seeing the impact of India's on the Western world, such as the spread of yoga. Yoga is now being recognized as a on June 21st. This entire globe celebrates International Yoga Day. So there has been a huge integration of the economy, Indian economy, with the other economies, and it is not just in terms of the economy as well as the culture and the other aspects. And here the example given is, before the globalization we never had an what is a commodity called paneer tikka burger, but now with the globalization the McDonald's is coming with its own system of its methods, and it has been mixed or hybridized with the Indian culture, and coming up, it has led to innovation of new products. So that is one aspect. And apart from that, the technological growth. See, in the past 3 decades, we have witnessed a huge technological growth, because if the growth is happening in one country, for example, take for instance, India is currently seeing a 4G, but Japan has already unfolded or unveiled 5G within its economy. So the growth in technological aspect in one country will lead to its spillover or transfer of that technology to other countries as well. So because of these reforms, we are seeing the technological growth as well. And if you look at the FDI perspective, many of the huge companies, MNCs, have come and set up their firms within India. So they will bring their superior technology that exists or that is being practiced in their countries to the Indian economy, which can be again implemented by the respective Indian companies as well. So these are the impact we have seen. And apart from that, see, everything is not a fairy tale. Though we have seen a large number of impacts and good impacts, still there are few chinks in the armor. That is, there exist many challenges. So what are these challenges that remain unaddressed as a part of the 1991 reforms? If you look at we are seeing a jobless growth. Though we are seeing a growth in GDP, we are witnessing a huge growth in GDP, but there has been a jobless growth. This is one huge concern. And apart from that, taxation framework is complicated and regressive. What do we mean by this? See, we mean by government has a taxation is a revenue for government, and it is of two forms. One is the direct tax, other is the indirect tax. See, for any economy, the ideal scenario should be the huge sources of revenue should be coming from direct tax. That is, wealthy people should be paying of the huge, large amount of taxes. Indirect taxes is kind of regressive nature. But India's taxation system, we are witnessing a huge amount of revenue being withdrawn, being unfolded, or the revenue that has been collected by the government is largely from the portion of indirect. So this has to change. That is one challenge. And apart from that, the several areas have remained untouched by reforms, like the agriculture sector and the informal sector. With the growth in economy since 1991, we have witnessed a huge growth in the formal sector. But informal sector also has grown by leaps and bounds, and it is till day unregulated. So again, the reforms have to be introduced in that particular sector as well. And the lack of consistency when it comes to policy making is another hindrance to the investor, foreign investors as well as the Indian investors, because if there is no consistency on the government's end, then the private investors are not willing or hesitant to invest in the economy. So this is one particular reason. And apart from that, that is one particular challenge. And the chronic inadequacy in infrastructure. See, if you look at the Niti Aayog's data, India has already unveiled national infrastructure pipeline of 111 lakh crore. Infrastructure is very essential for the growth of an economy, and this program has been launched to boost the India's GDP to $5 trillion. So this is the reason, and we are witnessing for the country as huge as the India in terms of its size, we are witnessing a lack of or inadequate infrastructure, such as the under construction of roads, and the railways, airports. So that is one other reason. And the small size of the financial sector is another challenge. Let me explain you that factor. See, since 1991, though the economy, the financial sector has grown by huge amount we are able to witness in the capital market and the number of banks being set up. See, banking for a economy to function very efficiently, it needs a robust banking system. But for the size of the Indian economy that exists, we need to have at least top six banks globally. That is, within top 100 banks globally, we need to have at least 6 banks. But we are having just one bank, that is SBI, that was also ranked 55th in 2019. And economic survey also quoted that we need to have 8 banks in top 100, 8 banks in top 100 to achieve the growth of $5 trillion. So this signifies that we are having a inadequate or the small financial sector that also needs to be challenged. So that is that is one more challenge. And apart from that, let us look at the last. These were the challenges, and now what is the way forward? See, this was the stated by our finance minister. Just a second. This was stated by our finance minister Manmohan Singh in the budget speech of 1991. So what did it say? No power on earth can stop an idea whose time has come. And for India to emerge as a global economic powerhouse, its idea has come. Hence, we are unfolding or unveiling the LPG reforms. So that was the stated, and it had charted the growth for the Indian economy. So still, what in today's context, we are struck by the pandemic, and what is the way forward in this particular scenario? Let us look at it. So we need a diversified privatization. So what do we mean by diversified privatization? So privatization is giving up the ownership of the private sector, government sector to the private sector. So but what is it leading to? It is leading to the concentration of wealth within the private players, limited private players. So we need to diversify that ownership, such as example coming up with the cooperative model. Cooperative model will lead to the spillover or the penetration, trickle down of that effect, wealth creation to different private sectors. So we need to follow that. That is diversified privatization. And apart from that, moving from shareholder capitalism to stakeholder capitalism. So what exactly is this? See, the corporations should be interested in the growth of its stakeholder. So as a company, who are its stakeholders? The consumers, the creditors, the societal aspect. So it needs to have a holistic growth, not just its shareholder. That is the meaning. So this needs to be introduced in the Indian economy. And apart from that, focusing on creating an integrated and progressive tax system. We have already seen that the huge amount of revenue that is collected by the government comes from the indirect taxes. We need to make it that is a regressive taxation structure. We need to move towards a progressive taxation system. And the clarity in the role the public sector envisages to play in the economy. We have also seen that there is a lack of consistency when it comes to policy making at the government end. So that has to the government has to have a clarity, and it needs to be reflected in its economic policies. And apart from that, holistic reforms in all the areas ranging from industry to labor, and the agriculture sector hasn't witnessed many reforms. We need to introduce reforms in that particular area as well. And if you look at the other points, we need to have an integrated approach to financial sector, such as bringing the large huge banks, that is increasing the larger size of banks should be the one topmost priority of the government. And apart from that, we need to have robust financial markets and fintech sector. So these apart from this, there are few more way forward for the economy. That is, with the evolution of India's political economy, the states need to be an integral part of the reformation process. So prior to 1991, we had seen that it was a central government controlled economy. Now we have slowly moved to a competitive federalism or the cooperative federalism, where the states also play a proactive role in the growth of an economy. So that should be the way forward. And government of the day needs to have a long-term vision, where it needs to be sensitive to the environmental concern as well, and incorporate the SDG goals within its policy making. So friends, these are the way forward, and we have discussed the LPG reforms thoroughly, from the reasons that led to the LPG crisis, BOP crisis, and the response of the government, and where do we stand now. I cannot highlight the importance of this topic going forward. You need to be thorough with this topic and have an overview of the entire LPG reforms. So friends, that's all in this particular session. Before we move, so let us look at the concluding remarks. So year 1991 is a landmark event when it comes to addressing the economic reforms in the independent India, and they have helped us to emerge India as a major economic powerhouse globally. And today, as per the recent economic service suggests, we are the largest economy, that is, we are the largest economy and growing at a huge pace. We have overtaken even China. So that is a huge achievement, but we need not be happy with that, because India has the potential to grow at 10% more than double digit of GDP. We need to make sure that we grow at our potential. And these are the different reforms that have to be introduced. You can go through that. We already covered. And the COVID-19 pandemic has presented us another opportunity to bring about the reforms of equal magnitude that we have brought in 1991. So that's all from this particular session. Before I go wind up this particular session, there's a homework question for you. Assess the India's 1991 liberalization reforms and the lesson it offers in the contemporary times. So this is for 20 marks and you have to write it within 400 words. You can write your answer in the comment section. We will review it and even award the marks that has to be that needs to be allotted for that particular answer. And apart from this, friends, if there is any economic topic which you need clarity upon, you can just mention it in the comment section. We will be coming up with that topic in holistically covering a wide range, covering it in wide depth as well as wideness. So giving you an overview of the entire topic. So friends, that's all we have from this particular session. For more such interesting videos, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you.